Turn out the lights.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a bonus episode of Decoding TV, a podcast about television. We're going to be covering Andor Season 2, episodes 4, 5, and 6 today. And joining me, David Chen, for that effort, he is the creative voice behind youtube.com/Patrick H. Willems. He's also a filmmaker whose work you can see on Nebula. Patrick Willems, how's it going today?
David Chen, it's going quite well. How are you?
I'm excited to be diving into this next batch of episodes. Really curious to hear what you thought about them. But first, want to mention a couple things before we get started today. Number one, I have adapted this conversation we're going to have, this rundown of the episode, from the amazing work of Dan Gvozden at decodingtv.com. If you want to read an extremely detailed recap, review, and rundown that is much more detailed and potentially more thoughtful than what I'm going to reveal to you today on this podcast, be sure to subscribe to decodingtv.com. It is free, and you'll get all of Dan's wonderful analysis. Would strongly recommend it. Second thing I want to say before we get into this week's batch of episodes is we got to correct a few things from last week's conversation, right?
Minor details.
People writing into decodingtv@gmail.com or commenting at youtube.com/@decodingtv, which, by the way, you should subscribe to if you're watching this on YouTube as well. But last week, I was talking about how there was a gigantic paparazzi device at the wedding on Chandrila. That was wrong. That was a DJ device. But what happened was I got it mixed up with a device that we actually see in this week's batch of episodes. So, like, there was, in fact, a photo-taking device on this week's batch of episodes. Sorry, I got that mixed up. That's my bad. I did watch all the episodes in advance, so...
also, David, these are two floating robots that don't exist in real life.
So I shouldn't go too hard on myself. I agree with you. There was a question in last week's episode where we discussed whether Kellen, the guy who had been ostensibly helping Brasso and Bix, had actually betrayed them, or was Brasso just saying he had betrayed them in order to throw suspicion off of them? And we asked people for their opinions at decodingtv@gmail.com and also on youtube.com/@decodingtv. And lots of people commented that they agreed with you, Patrick Willems, that what they interpreted it as was Brasso throwing the suspicion off of Kellen, and then the look that Kellen gives is a look of gratitude and not of triumph. So I would say that is the majority of responses. Now,
okay,
other people disagree, but anyway, that was a thing that was discussed last week. Thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is subtle. It is somewhat ambiguous. I think the only person who maybe really knows is Tony Gilroy.
Yeah. And then only other minor correction, I think there was a awkward moment in last week's batch of episodes of Andor where Siril arrives home and he says, "Hey, can we pretend this didn't happen, or we didn't do this again?" And you said it was because he wanted to have sex, but I think it was just because he wanted to avoid talking with his mom. He wanted to avoid the meeting with Edie. So just very minor correction on that one. But, you know, if you're looking for more Siril humiliation this episode, you're definitely going to get it.
Oh, yeah.
It's great. So, okay. Those are some corrections from last time. Let's get into this week's batch of episodes. Andor episodes 4, 5, and 6. Patrick Willems, what do you think of this batch of episodes?
I feel like I'll be a broken record for this entire podcast. I thought this was a really strong set of episodes once again. And I do think this time, I feel like in these episodes, you can really kind of see, like, Tony Gilroy and company being given even more freedom than in season 1, because this is a less action-packed collection of episodes than the first 3. It's much less Star Wars-y, I would say. You know, there aren't really stormtroopers, there aren't TIE fighters. Cassian is in them, especially the third one, like, less than I think he ever appears in the rest of the show. He is not really involved in, like, the climax of the third episode. It's all just other characters, and this, I think, really gets into, like, Tony Gilroy's like interest in things like the French resistance during World War II, which I think the Gormans are like really coded as, considering they basically have French accents and wear berets. And yeah, this is very much into like the nitty gritty of uh like I guess underground resistance movements, but then also like fascist machinations of like how to steadily and slowly and subtly manipulate I basically manipulate resistance movements and in order to like, you know, fulfill a kind of like a long-term plan. And so yeah, this is like, you've really got to pay attention in these ones because there's a lot of new characters and things get more subtle than they have in the past.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed this batch of episodes. I think, again, I brought this up during our first conversation, but just the ambition of the show is really striking. We're brought to new worlds and like all these new concepts, and also like stuff that's tied in with existing Star Wars lore that people may be already familiar with. But I agree with everything you said that. The parallels between what's going on in the show and the real world are very obvious, occasionally to the point of being clunky, you know. But it's appreciated. It's appreciated, and I like what the show's trying to do. And the dynamic between like the different aspects of the resistance slash rebellion are really interesting. They all have their own different philosophies and approaches, and seeing them collide, I think, is really going to be a big part of this season of the show. So let's talk about what actually happened in this batch
Yeah.
of episodes. The 3 episodes begin on Coruscant 1 year later, BBY3. With an air of mystery as an unfocused blinking red light and control panel fade into view, reminiscent of those that operated the Death Star laser in the original Star Wars, Bix wakes up in bed next to Cassian, confirming their recoupling. But she has a PTSD episode where she encounters Dr. Gorst, who tortured her in the first season. We see a bit of what their life is like together. But we also learn that Cassian killed a young Imperial soldier that saw Bix. Clearly, his loyalty is primarily to Bix and not necessarily to the mission these days. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about that. Like we kind of meet Cassian and Bix as a couple. I think this is like really the first time that we see them do couple things like buy dinner groceries and have
Right.
dinner together, right?
Which I gotta say, I know what we discussed last time, like how does everyone feel about like real world or more like grounded elements in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Obviously, this batch, it has them going grocery shopping. It has Good Morning Coruscant, a HoloNet program. And personally, I love all this stuff. I love seeing like the different types of melons they buy at the grocery store and like what are the alien foods and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as Cassian and Bix go, it is a thing where, like, obviously there was, in season 1, there was something there. I had always kind of gotten the sense that maybe they had had a thing before that had ended,
Right.
because then, you know, she's dating Tim, the rat who gets murdered. And then Cassian is basically gone for the rest of the
Right.
season. And then in this season, in the first 3 episodes, they're separated until the very end. So you don't exactly know what their relationship is. But here they are fully like living together. And man, Bix is having a rough time this season.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, the torturing of last season is still resonates, echoes throughout her life right now. It's really interesting. They never like. It's fascinating because in general, when torture happens on TV or films, like it's a physical torture.
Yeah.
And you could argue this is also physical torture, but like we never actually hear what she hears. Like we just kind of see the impact of it, and arguably that's more effective. So
I mean, the way they describe what that sound is that she was tortured with, I can't imagine any sound designer being able to create something that lives up to
right,
it.
yeah,
And
indeed.
but yeah, it's and then in this storyline, Bix basically develops a drug addiction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We see her kind of take a little droplet and consume it, ingest it.
That Luthen is
Uh,
providing her.
really, that was your interpretation?
Wait, I thought because they were talking about it when he visited the apartment, right?
Yeah, my interpretation of that was that he discovered it and he was not happy to discover it.
Okay, okay.
And he spends the rest of the episode kind of harping on Bix's mental health. He's like, we need Bix in good mental health, and so seeing the drug is a sign that she is not in good mental health. And so, like,
Right, right.
yeah.
Because
So I don't
she
think I don't think he supplied it. That was not my
okay,
interpretation.
okay.
Yeah,
I probably misread that.
yeah,
Because yeah, this is a thing where they say that he's saying that like it helps with sleeping, but then because like that's the problem. Like she can't fall asleep because she's haunted
yeah,
by these nightmares of Dr. Gorst. And this is an interesting thing because obviously, you know, the original intention of this show was to basically do like 5 seasons.
yeah.
And then season 2 is basically 4 years in one season. And this is one of those situations where I do wonder like, oh, if this was gonna be season 3, would this have been the Bix addiction season, where that's like a much bigger thing,
Right.
like over 12 episodes?
Yeah. Yeah. You could definitely, and that's something I think we'll see throughout is like, oh, how would this have filled a whole season of television? Like,
Right.
I think there's multiple plot lines where I think that might end up being the case. But in any case, Cassian is sent by Luthan to Gorman with an identity as a fashion designer, wanting to inquire about their finely woven silk. He adopts the identity of Varian Sky. Eventually, Cassian meets with Enza Rylance under the guise of setting up a meeting to discuss her father's silk business. He quickly assesses that the Gorman front is woefully underprepared for the challenges they face and is moving too quickly. The Rylances are trying to disrupt a late night weapons shipment and reveal what's happening about the construction of that Imperial armory. But Cassian is cautious and doesn't believe they are ready. While Cassian is away on Gorman, Bix continues to sink deeper into her drug use to cope with the vivid nightmares. And Luthen visits Bix and discovers that she's using the drugs, and he's not super happy with that. Luthen and Cassian meet at Port Steergard, just outside an Imperial naval base, carefully avoiding curious eyes. During their hyperspace jump to Coruscant, Cassian assesses that Luthen should not get involved with the Gormans, who he believes will be crushed by the Empire if they act. This angers and disappoints Luthen, who believes the act of rebellion has value even if they are crushed. Luthen dismisses Cassian's participation, ready to let him go for good, and signals to Clea to find someone else to replace him on Gorman as their plans progress. Let's just pause there for a moment and talk about
That's
that.
a lot.
That's a lot. I loved the interaction between Luthen and Cassian. It's clearly showing their differing approaches, right? Cassian experienced what happened on Ferrex last season and obviously has endured tragedy in his life. And he's like, look, like it doesn't go well when people do this unprepared. And Luthen he's just like, throw as many bodies as this as possible. It doesn't
Yep.
matter. And there's this amazing moment when Cassian says, and what if it burns? And he says, then it will burn very brightly.
If it goes up in flames, it will burn very brightly.
That is something that's very useful for Luthen. So it's chilling, but also effective. There's many lines in Andor season 1 that are like, oh, that's an iconic line. I think that is an iconic line from this season of like Luthen reacting that way. Yeah.
Luthen is really the guy who gets like the really good lines. Obviously there's the classic monologue from season 1, but it's the kind of thing where I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if Luthen spends his free time just like, even though he's not the face of the revolution, he's very much a behind the scenes guy. But if he spends his free time just almost like writing speeches or like thinking of like really good, inspiring like slogans that he can say to people, like all of this is so interesting. I do even want to jump back a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I love seeing just the mechanics of how this the rebellion in its early stages works. But I love when Cassian visits like this apartment on Coruscant,
Yeah.
with people who provide him his new identity. And then you have this cool I mean, one thing, I don't think we really got into this in our last episode, but I think this is one of the greatest walking shows of all time.
Mm-hmm.
There
Mm-hmm.
is and it never gets old or repetitive, but there is just so much footage through this whole show of just people walking through cool locations. You know, like there was that sequence in season 1 when it follows Clea walking like all through, like going on this big roundabout route through Coruscant to meet up with Vel. It's just like cool locations, people who often have cool hoods on, walking a lot. And I
Mm-hmm.
love it. But I love, here we have the sequence of Cassian like walking through Coruscant, and where we see like, and again, they do that amazing thing where they use like actual locations that they find like in the UK, and then like digitally add in like backgrounds or set extensions of like the Coruscant skyline, and so it feels so tangible. And then you basically this is like him traveling to, I don't know, like the spaceport or wherever he's going to travel to Gorman, but then he's listening to like this audio recording feeding him all the information about like, here is who you are, here is your career, like this is all the information you need to know to be this person, which I love. And I'm so curious as the season goes on to see, especially like once we get closer to, you know, the events of Rogue One and the beginning of the original trilogy, how Luthan is going to factor into just like the rebellion as we know it. Because he's very connected. He deals with like, you know, fancy upper class people on Coruscant. He talks to Mon Mothma all the time. And
but also he is not a known character from anything
No.
Rogue One or later. So it's
That's
like,
the thing.
Is he alive during this time? Is he running anything during this time? Like, we don't know.
But yeah, but he's also like, he's not like a fanatic the way that Saw Guerrera is, and we'll talk about him shortly. Because obviously, you know, he can get he can present himself, you know, as a member of society, but also he is so ruthless and ready to be like, oh, if Gorman just goes up and this is all destroyed, that's kind of a bummer, but you know, it's a worthy sacrifice. He will sacrifice basically anything for this cause. And it's interesting now, especially, I think this is like, this set of episodes is kind of like maybe the bleakest of the group. Like, this is really getting into just like the sacrifices and the messiness of like trying to execute a rebellion like this. You know, because we know that the Gorman rebellion is being manipulated. And Cassian he doesn't recognize that, but he is the one person that sees like, maybe we shouldn't get involved in this.
Maybe we shouldn't take the bait, you know?
Yeah. And Luthan is like, nope, full steam ahead. We're doing it. And yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
There is a scene when Cassian returns home and he's furious that Luthan never mentioned his visit. He suspects that Luthan had odd intentions, considering Luthan's penchant for mind games and subversion. So later, Cassian confronts Luthan at his art shop, and it's very uncomfortable because I felt very upset during the scene because Cassian is clearly breaking protocol.
Like
visiting Luthan. It's like, oh wow, he is breaking the boundary that should never be broken. It's very upsetting.
They're not even talking in the back room. They are talking in the shop, which he does not ever do.
Yeah, and then he like makes up this backstory for him. But Cassian is pleading with Luthan to keep in mind the human element. Like, Cassian loves Bix. His priority is Bix, and Luthan is saying, you have too many loyalties to Bix. And Cassian is saying, but I've also given you everything. And Luthan is kind of disagreeing with him because he's saying, I mean, you're disrupting the plan by being here, so I don't know if this is really everything, or if it's everything, it's not really what I want. It's a fascinating exchange. But it does seem as though Luthan takes some of this stuff to heart, and we can discuss that when we get to the final scene later.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
Do we want to talk about Cassian on Gorman? Because there's some really interesting stuff here when he's like checking into the hotel.
Yeah.
And then the the hotel like concierge who takes him up to his room. So we had mentioned in the previous episode, without getting into spoilers, that this season, because Tony Gilroy has talked about it, would deal with a Gorman event that has previously been established in Star Wars lore.
Yeah.
And this is interesting because they talk about an event that actually happened in the past in this show, which I believe they refer to as it the Tarkin Massacre?
Yes, the Tarkin Massacre. During this massacre, Grand Moff Tarkin, the Death Star wielding villain of Star Wars: A New Hope, landed his spaceship on 500 peaceful Gormans in the middle of the plaza. And the hotel that Andor stays in has the Tarkin Massacre monument right outside his window. So, yeah.
And the hotel employee that he's talking to tells him that his father died saving him, when this guy was 12 years old during that massacre. So right there, it's like, okay, the Gorman people have already suffered this great tragedy, and now the Empire is adding insult to injury by building this big armory overlooking the monument. I gotta say, I don't like these Empire guys. I think they're dicks.
There is this moment too when the bellhop talks about how there's all these questions of why would you stay here, and why are you still working at this hotel where this horrible tragedy happened right outside. And I guess I think it goes to show that people's connections to their home and their connections to their family are deeply important, even in the face of atrocity. And I assume that will become a theme that's relevant as the season goes on. But it really feels like the show is trying to draw parallels with actual stuff that's happening in the real world, and it's doing it in a pretty clear way. So
it's also it's an interesting comparison to Marva in season 1 when she talked about how there was the street that her husband and Cassian's foster father was hanged on, and how she had kept living on Ferrix, but had avoided walking down that street for years.
Right, it's a very similar kind of dynamic there. Agreed. Anything else about this Cassian subplot before we move on to Siril and Saw and Luthan?
Yeah, I mean, some of these intersect, especially because so much of this is on Gorman. Gorman really is the primary location for this new batch of episodes, and I always get into just how much I love the attention to detail in the cultures and the art direction in this show. I love the restaurant that Cassian meets. I am forgetting her name.
I believe it's Enza, right, Lance?
Enza Rylance, whose father is
Caro.
Yes. And of course they have their sort of spy code that they speak in with their other identities, and Cassian's immediately chastising her for you're
rushing. You shouldn't have initiated this meeting early. And she says it's hard not to rush when your world is being destroyed.
Right, which I get it. And but I love when there's a shot of just the bar and they look almost like ornate, crazy coffee brewing devices back there. It's just, the place looks incredible. Gorman looks like a cool place that I would love to visit.
Indeed. All right, let's move on, Patrick Willems. Let's talk about what happens with our good buddy Siril Karn this week,
who really takes center stage.
We meet Siril Karn while he wanders the capital city of Gorman, Palmo. The Gorman front, led by Caro Rylance, is monitoring his every step. Siril gets drawn into the web of the Gorman front When one of their members sells him a spider with a secret message hidden inside that invites him to an underground meeting, he immediately rushes to his office and establishes a secret communique with Dedra. Siril continues his operation as a double agent in a meeting with the Gorman Front. Enza Rylance, the daughter of Elector Caro Rylance, approaches Siril and introduces him to her father. He hopes that Siril might make their appeals to the ISB more effective, as he seeks to confirm that the Imperials are building an army that casts a shadow over their memorial to the events of the Tarkin Massacre. It was, and I already explained what happened during that massacre, but Siril appears to be moved by the Gorman's resoluteness in the face of oppression. Anyway, the Gorman Front believes they have the advantage over Siril after gaining access to his Imperial records, which detail his failures on Morlana 1. For this reason, they suspect he's eager to help them, prompting a meeting where they appeal to his loyalty to the Emperor, who they believe is unaware that the ISB is running a shadow government. This is like pretty complicated, I have to say. Like,
It is.
The show is trying to convey this really complicated idea that like Siril is being used unwittingly by Dedra and Partagaz for like unclear reasons, although explicitly the reason is that he's supposed to help them identify outside agitators.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the Gormans want to use Siril because they think, at least they're telling him, that if you are loyal to the Emperor, you will help us stop the ISB running the shadow government. But yes, this is a complex tangle of conspiracy that the early rebellion would have to navigate as their alliance is formed. Even in BBY3, the perception of Emperor Palpatine as a victim of attacks from a rogue Jedi Council and potentially the ISB underscores the power of propaganda, even among the Gorman people who have found themselves on the receiving end of the Empire's latest smear campaign. So I'll just pause there for a moment. But yeah, essentially, like both Dedra and Partagaz and the Gormans are trying to use Siril for their own ends. And where Cyril's loyalties truly lie, still in the mix, although we suspect he's loyal to Dedra Miro.
Yeah, but Siril really, took center stage
Yes.
in this batch of episodes. Like, he's not just the his usual, like, comically pathetic self that we cut over to occasionally doing something like foolish. He's like, the introduction to him is great, where we have him walking through like the Gorman Plaza to work, but also we hear the audio of a conversation that he has with Edie, where she's complaining like, why did you go to Gorman? Everything was good. You finally found a woman who likes you. Like Coruscant is so much better. And obviously he can't, he can't tell his mother like why he's really here. But this is all
it's
really
because the Empire has a Bureau of Standards field office on Gorman for some reason.
Of course.
Who knows?
I do also, I love the design of the office with that kind of like, like catwalk runway down the center that he walks to his office. It's great stuff. But this is a thing where it's like, obviously Siril is thrilled to seemingly play an important role in like helping the Empire and helping Dedra with like, a secret operation. But then I get the sense that because, like he's always just been like a true believer in what the Empire is doing. And obviously when he was going after Cassian in season 1, it was like a very cut and dry thing. It's like, this guy murdered officers. So it is the right, he's a criminal and must be arrested. But now this is this interesting situation where he's attending like a meeting of this like Gorman revolutionary group and hearing their very valid like issues and hearing about like the tragedies that have befallen them before, and so it's like I imagine it's hard not to be a little sympathetic to them, even if he's working against them. And obviously he's like spying on them and like reporting back to Dedra and Partagaz later. But also I think Siril likes to feel special. And the fact that these people are like giving him attention and like asking him to do stuff as well, I think he enjoys like the way that he puts all of those spiders like on shelves in his apartment. I'm interested in seeing where this will go if like, Cyril's like previously like diehard loyalty toward the Empire may get a little muddied.
Indeed. Very curious to see what's going to happen with Syril's loyalties as the season goes on, because he's clearly being pulled in many different directions. But in addition to all this stuff that happens, we also get a nice dose of what the Siril Dedra relationship is like. This is the real content that we're looking for.
We got content. We've got we've got Kiro content.
Kiro content.
Yes.
Siril quote unquote steals files from his office and boards a ship back to Coruscant, where he returns to their shared apartment, his shared apartment with Dedra Miro, and kisses her on the cheek. She looks like she's in agonizing pain when he does this.
This is the closest. This is the most physical intimacy they have had on screen, right?
On screen, well, until the next moment, when he kind of explains what has happened, and she says, I had you followed, Partagaz forced me to have you followed, and then she says, turn out the lights. And then he turns out the lights, and then very upsettingly, we don't see what happens next.
Very upsettingly, David, I imagine you screaming at your TV like, show us!
We don't see that efficient fascistic lovemaking that is the desire of every viewer of this show.
It is true. I mean, I have a million questions about what they do, but yeah, but it truly, the way they greet each other with a like, it's like I'll put it this way, like French friends when they greet each other and with like the kisses on the cheek, that has more passion than how how this couple greeted each other. It was incredible.
Well, you get the sense that I also have a lot of questions, because he kisses her on the cheek. She looks like not happy about it, but then she says, "Turn out the lights," so she knows. And I think she's not just doing that for him. I think there's like a part of her that wants that, because if there wasn't, then she wouldn't do it, because she's not someone that does stuff that she doesn't want to do, is my sense.
No, and truly Siril does what she wants to do.
Right.
That is how this relationship goes. Yeah, I mean, truly, have we ever seen her smile other than that one time when she was like about to torture Bix in season 1, and that smile is so unnerving?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. So yeah, like, what is she getting at? Like, we know what she's getting out of it psychologically and emotionally, but like, what is she getting out of it physically? Unclear, and the world may never know.
Well, we've
really
got
upsetting.
6 more episodes, and maybe we'll find out.
After a breakfast with his mother, where she decides to name one of the Gorman craft spiders Siril, Siril meets with Partagaz and Dedra to discuss his work with the Gormans. They convince Siril that their only goal is to bait the Gormans as a prize for outside agitators, and he tells them that he'll need to continue feeding the front accurate information about the shipping routes and schedules. Partagaz congratulates Siril on a job well done, and Siril says it's the best day of his life. Just the bestest day.
Which is, wait, what is the exact line?
If I say this is the greatest day of my life, does it spoil everything?
Again, I think it is truly the thing of he just likes feeling special. He just likes getting to like to know that he's actually a part of something important.
I'm just gonna say this. I feel like a lot of what happens with the ISB, I think, is very similar to like corporate dynamics of large corporations. Now, I would never ever compare any organization I have worked at with the ISB. But let's just say I've heard stories from people who have worked at organizations that are like the ISB, right? And what this show does a good job of capturing is when you do work in a corporation like that, often just the most minor sense of approval from a superior is enough to like make your day. Like you've worked for 3 weeks on a report and you present it, and then your boss is like, you did okay, good job, like decent job on this. This isn't totally trash. That can have an employee, again, not me or anyone, at my companies that I've worked at, but people who I've heard from other companies.
Of course.
That can make an employee feel like they're just walking on air. They're like, wow, this is amazing. And I think Siril is the ultimate kind of company man. He's the ultimate, like, I am part of this machine, and anything I do in furtherance of what this company's goals are If I can just get a little tiny scrap of approval, that's enough to like keep me going for a long time.
Yeah, it's a nice comparison to I believe his name is it Supervisor Hirt?
Mm-hmm.
Or attendant Hirt, or he might be a supervisor now. But when he's one of the ISB guys who we see with Lonnie.
Yeah.
Lonnie, as we know, is a spy.
Lonnie is the mole
yes,
for Luthan.
And there's a part where they're talking to Partagaz in the hallway, and Hirt says like it would be an honor, sir. And Partagaz kind of like, you know, chastises him for that, and he's like, he's so embarrassed after that.
Right.
An honor, sir.
Really? It's an assignment.
Yeah,
he got
laying it on too thick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, that's kind of like the bulk of what happens to Siril and Dedra this episode, or this batch of episodes. But we really got the content, Patrick. This is this is what you and to a lesser extent me had dreamed of.
It really is. I mean, I can't wait to see where it goes in future episodes. But yeah, Siril really taking center stage. But you've got this part where like the ISB comes in to search the office because they've discovered a listing device in there that, you know, the resistance movement had snuck in, and he is just outraged and humiliated that he is interrogated like during all of this. And also I think it's worth talking about the new cast of characters like on Gorman. Like, I love that we have a Gorman language. Like a lot of conversations in these episodes are subtitled.
Yeah.
Like they're not speaking basic, which is, you know, of course, English in the Star Wars universe, and they cast a lot of actors who are either French or German, as opposed to just the, like, you know, mostly it's just, you know, British and Irish actors. And so we have more people with accents speaking a language that kind of sounds like French. And this is, you know, like I said before, like with their style of dress, it is very like French resistance coded.
Yeah, absolutely. Clearly he's trying to, you know, Tony Gilroy's trying to draw the parallels, and we'll see where those go.
Richard Sammel, Sammel, who has played a lot of Nazis.
Right, he was the Nazi that got his head caved in by Eli Roth in the first...
In Inglourious Basterds.
In Inglourious Basterds, right?
Yes, he is the... I recently rewatched Casino Royale. He is the guy with the eye patch who shows up in Venice at during the final sequence. He's a German actor. He's played a lot of Nazis, and I'm happy for him that he actually gets to play someone resisting fascism for a change.
Everyone should get the chance.
Because it's just one of those things. It's like, oh, if you're a German actor and you have a certain look, well, have fun, because if like you're only if you're gonna get cast in American productions, it's just gonna be as a Nazi forever.
Yeah. There's one other side plot to mention that goes on Coruscant in this batch of episodes. Mon Mothma is trying to mitigate the Emperor's rapid erosion of the rights of his people by corralling the votes of other senators who have supported her causes in the past, but many are backing away in fear of retribution and a growing nationalism that has turned the legislative process of the former republic into a meaningless endeavor. The potent propaganda against the Gormans has made them a powerful target for the Empire's plunder, and Mothma feels powerless to effect change. So we see the swearing of the loyalties in this batch of episodes, and Mothma's trying to like work through the normal process, and it's not going very well. So just wanted to call that out.
Of course. And also, I think with the Mon Mothma stuff, where there's not, we don't see as much of her really until the third episode, but we see a lot more aliens than we usually do in Andor. I know there was like some some mild criticism from people in season 1 that it's like, is the show embarrassed to have aliens in it? And we see Mon Mothma talking to a lot of characters with like elaborate like prosthetics and stuff like that on them, which is great. Neil Scanlon, who's like the head of like the creature design, doing great work. There was one very brief scene that for a moment like kind of threw me just because it. If you remember, there's a part where Mon Mothma is in the Senate, and there is a guy, some alien senator making a speech in the center of the Senate, kind of proclaiming loyalty toward the Empire. He's not quite Dexter Jetster from Attack of the Clones, but looks vaguely similar. But it's just seeing an alien who also looks like he might be a CG character, as opposed to like a fully practical one, which we don't see a lot of in this show, sort of like making like, shouting, proclamations in a big booming voice. It is, I'm not even like saying it's bad. It's just that it felt a lot more like a scene from like Revenge of the Sith than like the rest of Andor. And so there was like, oh wow, this feels like more Star Warsy than the show usually feels.
Well, I saw this post on Threads by Lotomania on Threads, who says, quote, Andor is wild because it's a great commentary on the slow, unrelenting squeeze of authoritarianism and the banality of evil, but also Jar Jar Binks could canonically show up at any time, end quote.
And yeah, basically, this is like the rare scene that reminds you that, oh, right, yeah, this, like, wrinkly old Palpatine is like maybe a few rooms away, and maybe Jar Jar Binks is still the senator from Naboo.
This show demonstrates that Palpatine needed to do a lot more to maintain an authoritarian regime than just shoot electricity bolts out of his hands.
Exactly.
He needed to make sure that certain groups of people were subjugated in accordance with their standing in society, slowly erode people's rights, maintain a grasp on the legislator. There's a lot of work that goes into the fascism, and I'm glad that Andor is illuminating that, as opposed to just the guy shows up, he's evil, he laughs, and he shoots electricity bolts.
Shouting unlimited power.
Yeah, I mean,
David Chen, a thought that I have fairly often while watching this show, especially whenever we see like meetings with like, the like rebellion people. I think, man, these people would be so annoyed by Luke Skywalker. Like, the idea of these people sacrificing so much, and to be clear, I know that Luke's aunt and uncle were murdered by the Empire. I know he suffered too, but like the idea that some whiny farm boy shows up for one day, blows up the Death Star. The Death Star that obviously, Cassian died before Luke did that. But the Death Star that Cassian, while imprisoned, was forced to build pieces for. This thing that he has lost, friends trying to fight. And then Luke, this little goober, shows up, and it's just like, yo, it's like bullseyeing womp rats back home in my T-16. And then blows the thing up, gets a medal, and these guys are like, this goddamn guy who does he's up there on a stage, a princess who is kissing him because the odds of them being related are so slim, and we have gone through hell, and we're just here clapping. Just a thought that I have sometimes.
Agreed. Yeah, it's hard when people show up late to the party and they get all the credit.
It is true.
He's like the guy who came in at the very end of the group project and took all the credit, right? Like,
exactly.
We did all the work, we pulled an all-nighter, and he came in at the end, and he's like, I'm the one that thought this up. Maddening.
Yep.
Maddening.
I mean, imagine Luke saying to Cassian, oh, well, I used the Force. Like if Han Solo thinks that the Force is a bunch of like superstition, I can't imagine how dismissive of it Cassian would be.
Indeed. All right. Patrick Willems, before we move on, just want to give a quick shout out to where you can find more of Patrick's work at youtube.com/Patrick H. Willems, where he's making cool short films /video essays /commentary. Check it out. And also, if you're enjoying this conversation we're having right now on youtube.com/atdecodingtv or on the podcast, you can also find it at the other place that I didn't say, or that you're not enjoying it on. Subscribe to us on YouTube. I know a lot of people, Patrick, you see this, right? A lot of people who watch your stuff on YouTube, they're not subscribed. They're like,
I know.
what's going on? You're clearly, if you've reached this point, you're clearly enjoying the video.
Yeah.
So just subscribe.
It doesn't cost any money.
Yeah, youtube.com/atdecodingtv and also decodingtv.com, where you can get detailed recaps and reviews like the one that I'm reading from by Dan Gvozden. Check it out. It's super great, interesting, insightful analysis. Okay. Let's move on. Let's talk about Saw Guerrera. Got a little bit of Saw this episode.
We did.
On the planet Dakar, future headquarters of Senator Leia Organa's resistance against the First Order, Saw Guerrera, his ally who's known as Two Tubes, although I think he's called Benthic is his name. Anyway,
I'm
just going to call him Two Tubes. And his terrorist group of partisans guard their base, which is complete with 2 X-Wings and a transport ship. Saw approaches a worse-for-wear Wilman, who hides a rhydonium extracting machine under a sheet. Saw hopes to use the complicated machine to extract the deadly gas for unknown purposes, but he has lost several untrained men during the process. He knows Wilman has been successful, so he captures him with the promise that he will let him leave once he teaches a recruit named Pluti how to complete the procedure unassisted. When Saw questions Will about Pluti's preparedness, Will plainly states that he believes that Pluti is ready. Will's decisiveness triggers something in Saw, prompting him to blast Pluti without hesitation. The entire squad turns to witness the aftermath of the murder, but Saw tells him Pluti was a traitor who's been transmitting information to the Empire. There is a transmission device that Two Tubes finds on Pluti's corpse as evidence of treason. Wilman is horrified, but Saw orders his men to evacuate the base before he can object. All right, let's talk a little bit about this. A couple questions here, Patrick Willems. First of all, my assumption is that Pluti was not actually a traitor. I think that is heavily implied, if not outright indicated.
Yeah, the quote unquote evidence that they provide is, I don't know, they just pick up a thing that was in his pocket.
Look at this thing. I can pick up. I'm picking up a thing right now in the video. Like, look at this thing. It's his transmitter. So who knows? The question is, why does Saw blast Pluti out of existence? Because they have this whole talk where Pluti says, "Hey, if I know which base we're going to, I can give you 100% guarantee I'm definitely gonna be able to do it." And then so Saw tells him, "This is the base," and then you think he's gonna kill Wilman because
earlier he says that, like,
he says, get rid of him.
Once we don't need Wilman anymore, I'm gonna kill him because he's seen too much.
Yeah. And it's like, well, the people who sent him are going to be pretty pissed. And he's like, accidents happen. It's very cold. Very Luthan-like in many ways. So what happened here? Now, my interpretation of this is that Saw sees that Saw is super cutthroat, and he sees that Wilman is more useful than Pluti because Wilman can do all the rhydonium codes. He doesn't just need to know one. He has complete mastery of the thing. And there's no need to have 2 people who can do this around. So he wants to keep Wilman, and there's no need to have 2 people who can do this around because it's risky. Because why have redundancy? He wants to keep the group as small as possible. So that's why he kills Pluti. That was my interpretation. Patrick Willems, what do you think?
That was pretty much mine as well. And I also feel, because I think the main thing about this storyline, which is only in the first 2 of the 3 episodes, is really to show that, like, I like, while in the first batch, we had the storyline where on Yavin 4, where we saw like the messiness and chaos of some rebel factions. Here we're seeing like the farthest, most extreme of the factions, where like there's a part where in the big speech that Forrest Whitaker gives, where he is like, "Do you think I'm crazy? Yes, I am crazy." And, like, this guy is like, he is unhinged. And I think part of the motivation for killing Pluti is also just like, even if this guy isn't a traitor, having everyone have having everyone there on his crew see him kill someone and be like, I found a traitor and I'm going to execute them. It kind of like builds morale and commitment, as if like, look, they could be anyone. We have to be hyper vigilant, and I am the guy who you should be following because I am the one who's gonna like root them out. And it's kind of just like to instill loyalty in everyone. And I'm just like, that is a crazy tactic, for a leader to just be like, I'm going to periodically kill somebody, but I'll just tell you, oh, don't worry, they were a bad guy. Which is, honestly not too far. That sounds like the kind of thing that like the ISB would do. But yeah, this is. And then also Willman, similar to Willman and Bix having the toughest time of anybody. Obviously, in season 1, his father was killed, and now Luthan sends him to this planet where he is just basically kidnapped and just, forced to just, to teach someone this thing, and then while like I love watching Forrest Whitaker give a weirdo performance, he's always going for it. He gets the most stressful part of this whole thing to me, while they're on this planet and Willman is finally, he's got his gas mask on, he's having to do this whole complicated operation that like, it's not defusing a bomb, but it basically kind of looks like defusing a bomb. It is. And the entire time he's focusing on this really complicated procedure with this machine, Saw is just monologuing to him the whole time, and I'm so stressed out because I'm like, Saw, let him concentrate, please. leave the kid alone. He's really under a lot of pressure right now. I would snap if that were me. I really enjoy all that stuff. I love.
Looks like, by the way, it was Marquez Moon, Neen Valley, Station 4 Junction. Obviously, according to what Saw said, yeah.
A place that we know and love.
My favorite place in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. The one thing about this storyline, which really only has like a few scenes, is I'm still not super clear on what this like gas or chemical is. I know Saw has this whole monologue about how he was exposed to it years ago, and it like, but it like messes with you physically. But then he kind of like, is that the thing? I assume that he's like huffing in Rogue One on that like little like like breathing machine. He's got the little like oxygen tank.
Maybe. I mean, my sense, Patrick, is it's just like the equivalent of like ketamine. Like what people are, which is apparently very popular among certain groups of people today.
So
right?
I hear.
Like, it's something that kind of makes you feel like you can see things and experience things that you aren't able to normally, and doesn't necessarily make you more stable. It's kind of what it seems like. So,
just like with this whole operation kind of built around, here is this complicated machine to like extract this chemical. And now we're going to go to this planet and hook it up to like this pipeline. And I'm just like, I wouldn't have minded maybe just a little bit more info on like what the purpose of this thing is. Because then we've got that moment when Saw is like, breathe it in, boy.
Breathe it in, boy. That's freedom calling.
Like, take your gas mask off, and Willman is like freaking out and hacking and coughing and then screaming, and I just would have liked maybe a little bit more about what the real like why this is all kind of devoted to this gas.
I would agree, and I would say that where I would have appreciated more details is around Willman as a character. Like, what is this character going through this point? We know very little about what has happened to him in the intervening time since the last group of episodes. And the primary takeaway I got from this is, like, first of all, yes, it's clearly showing you how Saw got to be the way he was by the time of Rogue One. But also just that, like, there is this kind of ecstasy and freedom that comes by losing all inhibitions and attachment to the world, that like that is a more extreme version, I think, of what Luthan talks about when he talks about his dedication to the cause, right? Saw is clearly like an extremist and unbalanced, and there is this kind of like freedom and ecstasy that and excitement and exhilaration that come, and there's a reason why Saw is the way he is, and like we get insight into that here. He's addicted to this gas, and feels like it is like fuels and matches his personality. So I thought that was kind of fascinating, but yeah, I wish more details on the gas and what the purpose is, and more details on like what Wilman's inner journey is. I think that all would have been very helpful. So
Yeah,
anyway.
it's I mean, I think I'm pretty cool with like Wilman's story here, even though he barely even speaks during all of this. Just this idea that like, oh yeah, he's now just it's kind of like with Cassian and Bix, where it's like, oh right, Luthan just tells them to go places. They kind of they do that. And just this guy is being really run ragged just because he's like, look, I've committed to this. I have nowhere else to go. And now I'm being held hostage here, basically. And purely it's just like, if at the beginning of that first scene, Saw had just had a few more lines about like, here's why this gas matters. I'm like, great.
Yeah.
That would have, I think, cleared up like, because I went back and rewatched it. I was like, okay, wait a second. What is he doing? What is this? What are these variations that he needs to do? So yeah, wouldn't have minded if that was a little bit clearer.
Yeah, we're on the same page. We're on the same page. But there is it is an incredible scene, you know, like it's just like full of this frenetic energy. But yeah, I think Patrick and I both wish there had been a little bit more character development or even plot development.
Yeah,
leading up to this.
But that sequence when they're like in the rain at night, Saw is giving this crazy monologue while Willman is like is maneuvering this thing, and you're watching like he like turns a knob and like these metal pieces like click into place. It's like you see how, again, it feels like it could all just totally explode and kill them all if he doesn't nail it perfectly. It's just really nice stuff there.
All right, Patrick Willems, let's talk about some of the final plot lines in this episode.
Let's do it.
Luthan and Clea. In Luthan's art shop, Clea scans radio frequencies broadcast throughout the galaxy as she attempts to connect with a listening device they planted in Davos Skeldon's art collection, which is currently set to be displayed at the upcoming Imperial Ball that they hope to spy on. When she finally connects, she overhears Skeldon informing Misko that he had discovered various pieces of his collection are forgeries, none of Luthan's. But as it turns out, the dealer who sold him one of the forged pieces is dead, so they must vet every piece in the collection, including the one currently hosting Clea's listening device. Meanwhile, on Gorman, Luthan's replacements for Cassian, Vel, and Cinta meet for the first time in several years after both had told Luthan they would only take the assignment if the other was also on it, and they rekindle their relationship. The remainder of this story arc follows a cross-cutting Andor third act set piece, which is classic, that sees Mon Mothma hobnobbing with the muckety-mucks of the Imperial world, including Skeldon, Luthan, and Orson Krennic, played by Ben Mendelsohn, as they approach the Arc Gallery where Clea and Luthan have hidden their listening device. To retrieve the device, Clea recruits Supervisor Young as a distracting physical barrier, while she painstakingly tries to remove the device from an artifact covered in Braille-like text. Meanwhile, on Gorman, the front executes their sabotage of the weapons transports. The plane goes off without a hitch, and the team retrieves weapons from a downed vehicle, proving once and for all that the Empire was lying about not building an armory in Palmo. There is a dazzling heist with a really cool shot that follows a weapons crate from the streets of Palmo down tight street-side tunnels into the underground, where the front's exit vehicle awaits. However, problems arise as the people of Palmo notice the activity, and one of the Gormans we've seen at the front's meetings shows up to ask questions, which prompts a member of the front to pull a blaster on him. In a tussle, a single shot is fired, and wouldn't you know it, the blaster bolt kills Cinta. As the Gormans flee and the ISB police arrive, Vel chastises a young soldier whose blaster led to Cinta's death. So,
there's a lot here, David.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So, where do we want to start? The art show thing? What do you think?
Let's talk there. Okay, I just want to say, Clea rapidly becoming one of my favorite characters on the show. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed her in season 1, but what just think of like, oh right, this is like Luthan's assistant, and then the more time you spend with her, you kind of realize like, oh no, this is kind of basically just like a partnership. She is like really running stuff, and
Right.
and is like so committed to this cause, but also so good at keeping up this front, and so poised all the time, and like Luthan is messier, and she is the one who is like the most controlled. And this sequence, I love the sequence at Davos Skeldon's party, which apparently is an annual party because you've got Lonnie and you've got Hirt, you got multiple ISB guys who are just like, oh hey, yeah, how are you here? And they're like, oh, we come every year. Yeah, Partigaz like gave us his ticket. It's great. And then and just like in at the Chandrillan wedding, we've got more space cocktails that look great,
Mhm.
which here is just like pounding. He's like, oh, they're great. I'm on my third one. I love that stuff. But then I'm so happy to see Lonnie again because obviously like one of the highlights of season 1 is
Yes.
Lonnie's meeting with Luthan, and just Clea just like having to improvise and seeing Lonnie and just be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to flirt with this guy or pretend to flirt with this guy and just order him to come in here. And just the sequence then where she is talking to him and being like, look, and he's like, this is suicide. We're all going to get killed. She's like, I don't care. This is like, you are going to help me. And this is what is going to happen. And while Krennic is like 15 feet away from them, and then when she's trying to explain to him like, okay, here is what this piece means. So then when you're quizzed about it, you'll be able to repeat that and move a little bit to the left so that you block the view. And then this thing that she's putting in gets stuck, and her like the shots of her hand bleeding as she's like
Yeah.
as it's like shaking as she's trying to turn it are so good. And I'm like, this rocks. And then cutting between that and then an underground revolutionary group like heisting like a weapons transport is awesome.
It is a great sequence. And by the way, I want to say, in my opinion, a lot of the music this season is inspired by Hans Zimmer's score for Inception. There's a couple of tracks this season that are like really. I would almost guess that they used Inception as the sort of temp track, and then they like made something similar to it. In the case of the heist sequence, it's very similar to the Mombasa track from Inception. And then there's another track that I'll discuss later on when it happens that's like also very similar to an Inception track. I'm not going to reveal that right now, though.
I do also want to mention, I noticed I was looking at the credits at the end of the episode. I think might have mentioned in our previous episode that Brandon Roberts replaced Nicholas Britell as the composer this season. Britell is credited as composer on episodes 4 and 5, with then additional music by Roberts, who then did episode 6. And so I was wondering, because Roberts is credited for the first 3 episodes. So I'm like, did they here's my theory, which could be completely wrong. I can't wait to find out in the next episode that I am completely wrong. So maybe because I know Gilroy has said they finished and locked every single script before they started production.
That's right.
Yeah, because
there was like WGA strike stuff at stake at the time, right?
And so so it's like no writers were on set, but he's like, it didn't matter. Everything was like perfect and ready to go. And I wonder if just maybe because of like sets or locations or whatever, they shot this arc first, and Britell then worked on episodes 4 and 5 before he had to step away, because it's just surprising that he did the music for those 2, but not like the first 3.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
interesting.
Just a thing I noticed.
Yeah. Anyway, the music is great, but it's also like, oh, this really sounds like Hans Zimmer's score for Inception. Which is something I experienced multiple times.
Actually, another little thing I want to point out is I feel like there's the Andor theme that always plays and like always has little variations during the little opening title sequence. This season has been kind of getting more experimental with the audio there. Like there's an interesting one in, I think it might be episode 5, when the like Andor logo is coming in at the beginning. The music will then like start like kind of like switching
It's like
out.
a radio. It's like a radio. You're tuning a radio.
222.
As if, and then you realize you see that we cut to Clea like checking her little like frequencies of like various like listening devices that she has, and they're doing some cool things there. Even like, not to go back to episode 3, but they did a very classic Star Wars move where obviously the Andor logo appears over a background of space, and then the logo fades away and the camera just pans over as then we see the TIE fighter fly in. Like picking up like in the shot from the title sequence.
Yeah.
And they're finding new things to do with it, which is cool.
I mean, it's just cool to watch a show where the theme song is different every week.
Yes.
Where it's very rare that happens on any show on TV. And like it kind of in first season and parts of this season, it really mirrors like stuff that's going on in the episode itself. So very cool. But yeah, I love the sequence of her trying to remove the listening device. When they leave, it's like the most lighthearted we've seen Luthan ever, I think.
I know.
She's just like, he's just having a blast.
Making a joke about, hey, we could have killed Krennic when we were in there.
We should have killed Krennic by when we were up there.
Yeah, that was funny. And then the heist, really well done. Just like very tense. I'm watching this. I'm like, this is incredible. That they we obviously got a heist in Andor season 1 with the eye and all that stuff. Incredible stuff. Incredible work.
I mean, do we want to talk about that really wild shot?
Yeah. I mean, this shot that like follows the weapons case down into the tunnel, and where it's picked up. Right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, where it's like they start unloading stuff from this transport that they've crashed. Then the camera goes over the transport, follows the case down the tunnel into like this sewer where it's then loaded onto a truck. And I'm just like, they built a set that big?
Right. Like they either did it digitally, in which case it looks great, or they actually built it and then like did a drone shot that like follows it into the thing. Who knows?
I was honestly thinking what they might have done is a drone down a tunnel would be really complicated. I'm like, did they have on like a camera operator with the camera on a gimbal, like slide down the tunnel after it? It's really impressive, and it's not overly showy, but like it establishes the geography so well, and just the sense of like, okay, we know that they built like, the streets on like a back lot, but then the idea that then the set goes lower, to like it goes into like an underground level. That's just really wild stuff, and I would love to see like a behind the scenes thing about the Gorman set and how this was done.
There is one final sequence we need to discuss, but Cinta dying, I think what I took away from it is the show is trying to say sometimes people die in the course of this thing, and it's often in the most pointlessly feeling way possible. Like there is no broader purpose to Cinta's death in this situation. It's just because a stupid kid was careless. Like,
and it didn't. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when they're going over the plan, doesn't Vel say only Cinta and I will have blasters? And clearly this other guy didn't listen. But it's so heartbreaking because it's like, Vel and Cinta, obviously, they've had a relationship to some degree, and then it seemed like when they briefly saw each other in episode 3, it was the first time in a while, and now we like learn when they finally reunite here that they basically haven't seen each other in like probably like in at least a year. And they finally like reunite, and it's really nice because people on this show don't get to be happy very often. And then Cinta dies in the most meaningless way possible.
Yeah.
And I mean the
classic Andor.
The dressing down that Vel gives the guy,
legendary.
As he's like crying over what it's just like I would not be able to live with myself. It is so brutal.
Yeah. It's pretty rough.
But I'm wondering now, like, is this going to be a thing where, because like we lost Brasso in episode 3, I'm like, man, do I just have to prepare myself for like a heartbreaking death every 3 episodes of like a great supporting character who I care about?
In the final sequence, we join Dr. Gorst on his journey home from the Imperial Ball as he rides an elevator up to his offices. But when he steps off the elevator, Bix is there to confront him.
David,
she pulls a gun on him.
You forgot a very key detail. He's holding a piece of cake. He's carrying a container that has a slice of cake.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
She pulls a gun on him, straps him down into his sound torture device, all while his slice of cake sits on the control panel. She flees the room as he screams in agony, shoots an Imperial guard in plain sight with Cassian, and walks away. They smile while Cassian pulls out a trigger device that blows up the building as they walk towards the camera. Couple things to point out. First of all, this is a mission that was assigned by Luthan, I think, is the implication. Because shortly before this, they get the Luthan signal. They get the Luthan like light signal, like, hey, there's a mission. And Bix says, hey, I'll go with you on this mission. And he's like, oh yeah, I don't know if you should, maybe you should, like there's a debate about it. So I think the implication is that Luthan wants to get rid of Dr. Gorst because he doesn't want them to like operationalize this whole torture system they have.
Because the ISB was talking about Dr. Gorst in an earlier scene.
Yeah, they're like, we have to make this, we have to like productize this torture device.
Yep.
We have to like make it go national or international, or whatever it is, intergalactic. And obviously he wants to head that off at the pass, so that's nice. But in addition, I think it's also him realizing like, hey, maybe this will help give Bix some closure and help her out emotionally, which I think it does, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a surprisingly fun sequence considering that you're watching like, a traumatized victim of torture getting revenge. But it isn't, because like, I think this sequence, it's really cool, first of all, but like it's also a relief because watching the road Bix is going down, it's like, oh God, is she just gonna like sink further and further into like, is this trauma and now addiction going to just like ruin her completely? And here I feel like watching Bix get revenge and walk away, I feel like she might be okay.
Yeah, it turns out when you are traumatized, the thing you need to fix that trauma, kill the thing that caused you the trauma in the first place. Like,
I don't think she's going to have
solution. That's the solution, right?
Yeah,
like,
maybe she won't have nightmares about Dr. Gorst showing up at her home and torturing her again because now he is dead.
Well, we don't know what happens to him exactly.
That is true, but
he's not going to be okay. I'll put that out there.
No, but I'm just like it is. This is also very dark. I mean, look, as this is the same franchise where they changed the title of the third movie because Jedis do not seek revenge, and now here we're watching our heroes get revenge, and it is satisfying.
Indeed, it is great to watch. The lessons it has about trauma, I'm not going to take too seriously, but it's nice to see when the torturers become the torturees.
Yes.
That's just a great experience.
I don't think Cassian and Bix ever claimed to be role models. But like, it's also great watching Bix just walk down that hallway and his Imperial officer is like, hey, who are you? And she just blasts him.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great.
It's great.
And also just like I do want to just shout out to the filmmaking of the part with Dr. Gorst, the way it's shot where like she hits the button and then you see it kind of from the kind of control room, as then there's this like beeping, like this countdown as she just walks out the room. And then the beeping stops, and then just watching his body just like his head go flip back as just like he starts shaking like uncontrollably. It's intense stuff. And
Agreed.
It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Patrick Willems, any closing thoughts on this batch of episodes? It's a solid batch of episodes.
Solid batch
really
of
well
episodes. Hey, we got to hear that Lita and her husband, something Skulden, they're they're back from a trip they went on. So a year into marriage, seems to be intact. Yeah.
The relationship that everyone was invested in. That's the one. It's doing good.
Yeah.
Doing good.
I know. I'm trying to think if there were any other little bits and pieces that we have yet.
So there is one thing I wanted to mention, which is the Dexter Jexter thing that Dexter Jexter, for those who don't know, is a character who appears in Attack of the Clones.
Owner of Dex's Diner.
Right, which looks like a kind of like 50s, 60s era diner from Earth, which is very odd considering it's on Coruscant. But the building that Cassian goes into that you alluded to earlier, that looks like a combination of a brothel and a spy facility, you see remnants of what used to be a diner kind of just beyond its repurposing in that scene. So, maybe the diner aesthetic is more well known on Coruscant than we'd previously understood. So I just wanted to mention that.
But that is not meant to be the former location of Dex's Diner.
I don't think so. But I would be remiss if I did not mention it.
Okay.
Put it that
okay.
way.
Well,
So,
look.
yeah.
A thing that there's so many like Star Wars lore books and stuff like the visual dictionaries published by like DK. I would love a map of Coruscant. I know that the city is a planet, and that would be enormous and impossible. But I'm just like, I would just like to know, like, because like it is maybe the location that in the past like 25 years they have returned to the most in Star Wars stuff. Even if the sequel trilogy was like really allergic to it and so terrified of showing Coruscant, but it's just so essential. It's like the capital of the galaxy. I would love to just know where everything is in relation to each other. Where is the Jedi Temple? Where is the ISB headquarters? Where what district does Edie Karn live in? I want to know.
Wow. All right. Make it happen, Star Wars people.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Come on.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.